Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Todd sent me an interesting story, and there's not a whole lot to the story, but it's an interesting idea. And I've talked about drunk driving before, and in my career practicing law for 31 years in the state of Michigan, I've represented a few people who were charged with drunk driving. And we'll get to that in a second, but ABC 13 News, WZTV, out of Nashville, has this story from Tennessee. Law requiring drunk drivers to pay child support if parent is killed passes in Tennessee. Jordan Whittington wrote the story. Legislation that targets drunk drivers unanimously passed the Tennessee House on Monday. They call it Bentley's Law, and is aimed to hold drunk drivers accountable by requiring them to pay child support if they are involved in a wreck that kills a parent. So a drunk driver is in an accident, kills a parent of somebody. That drunk driver gets to pay child support for the children of that person who was killed. Under House Bill 1834, an impaired driver convicted of vehicular homicide will be ordered to pay restitution in the form of child maintenance to each of the victim's children until they turn 18 years old and graduate from high school. If the defendant is incarcerated and can't pay, the defendant is then given 1 year after their release to begin payments. If the child reaches 18 but hasn't been paid in full, payments will continue until the child is entirely paid, according to the bill. Bentley's Law is created by Cecilia Williams, who named the legislation after her 5-year-old grandson. Williams says no amount of money will make up for the loss of life, but hopes the law will lift some financial burdens of kids left without parents, especially kids left without parents because drunk drivers. It will always be a constant reminder to the offender of what the person's actions have caused, Williams wrote. And of course, a lot of people just simply look at it and go, well, you caused this harm, you pay for it. So being House Bill 1834 and guessing that the legal process of creating laws in Tennessee is similar to that elsewhere, I suspect it then has to go through another chamber, as we say, assuming it's a bicameral setup. And if it passes both, then it would be sent probably to the governor for signature, and where the governor could sign it if it's popular, or possibly veto it. And if it got vetoed, get sent back down, go for veto override, blah, 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 blah. We're halfway through the legislative process on this, apparently. I'm guessing. I could be completely wrong. Some states do actually do things a little differently, but so it's HB 1834. I'm guessing it's House Bill 1834. And so we'll see. But unanimous support. And it's kind of hard, I think, for a politician to stand up and say, no, I'm against punishing drunk drivers. It's one of those things that I think will get a broad base support. So I've had people ask me, and they say, Steve, if you're an attorney and you defend somebody, doesn't it bother you if they did what they're accused of doing? You're defending guilty people. And I actually had people ask me that before I became an attorney. I had people say, Steve, you're going to go to law school? I said, yeah. Going to become an attorney? Yeah. Think you'll ever defend somebody in a criminal case? Possibly. I don't know. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do then. But I said, why? And they say, well, how could you do that? How could you defend somebody knowing they're guilty? And you have to understand that an attorney's job is not just to get someone off. It's not just to get people out of trouble, okay? So someone's accused of a crime. The attorney's job is not simply to try to get them to evade all consequences. An attorney's job is manifold, but one of their tasks is simply to make sure the person gets a fair trial or a fair process going through the legal system, even if they don't go to trial. Another thing an attorney does is simply guide somebody. So if you've never been to court before, it can be a scary concept. And so if you're sitting in my office and we're going to court tomorrow, I can tell you what to expect. And then tomorrow morning, I'll meet you at the court. I'll be standing there with you. I'll walk with you through the court. I'll explain to you. We're going to go in there. Here's what's going to happen in there. Here's who's over there. Those people over there, you want to know what they're doing? Just for the fun of it, I'll tell you. And so the attorney does a whole bunch of different things, but something's going to happen to you. And that's the point, is that if you go in and you're charged with this, and I get the charge reduced to this, and it's still an alcohol-related offense, but the penalties are a little bit less, that could be a win for you. That could be a win for you. And there are some situations where drunk drivers can go to jail, but they'd prefer not to. So if I can keep you out of jail, you might consider that a win also. So I would sit down with my clients and say, you've been accused of drunk driving. You've been charged with this level of drunk driving. Here's what that means. Here's what I think they'll knock it down to if I go in and press them on this. And if I can get it knocked down to this, here's what's likely going to happen to you. Would you like that? And then I was thinking about this and I realized there's actually one exception. I had one exception in my entire career on this. And I can't go too heavily into the facts, but I had someone come into my office who was charged with an alcohol-related offense. And they were going to go to court for this, and they wanted to hire me. And I said, tell me what happened. And they told me what happened. And I said, okay, it looks to me like you've got a great defense if you were to do this. This would be the best way to handle this particular case. And they said, I don't want to do that. I'd rather do, and they had another idea. And in my mind, their idea was not going to work. Let's put it that way. It was an impractical thought to think we're not going to do this, we're going to go do that. It wouldn't have worked. And I told them that. I said, look, I know for a fact that we can go into that court, because I knew that court really, really well. I said, we go into this court with your facts, I can get you this. And that right there, my friend, is a good deal. And the client said, no, I don't want to do this. I want to do this. And I said, I'm really sorry, but I can't advise you to do something that I think is not going to help you. And the person said, fine, I'll go find another attorney. So I don't know what happened there. But in that particular case, they didn't believe that my course of action was the best course of action for them to take. And you might say, but Steve, if someone wants to hire you, is it really your job to tell? Well, you can go into a plastic surgeon's office and go, I'd like to have a nose put right here. I'm convinced if you put another nose right here, it would really work. It would make me a little more attractive, and people would look and go, look, that man has a nose right here. And I think a plastic surgeon's got the right to look at you and go, no, that's stupid. You'd look like an idiot. Don't know why you'd want to do that. It wouldn't function. And no. And that person, the patient, could then say, well, fine, I'll go find somebody who will. Great, go find somebody who will. And to this day, I do not know what became of the person who said, I don't like your advice of trying to do this. Instead, I want to try this wacky route with my defense. I don't know what happened to them. I do not know. I do know for a fact they didn't go into court and do that and have it work, because it just wouldn't work. The same way you don't see people walking around with a second nose right here. But I digress. The point is that when you come into an attorney's office, it often says attorney and counselor. And you might wonder what that means. Why does it say attorney and counselor? And if you read the rules regarding attorneys and how they're supposed to behave, the rules of ethics, the rules of ethics actually talk about what you can and cannot advise your client to do. So it'll say, for instance, that you can advise your client on courses of action that are lawful and that might better their position. You cannot counsel them to break the law or to do unethical things or do illegal things. You cannot tell them to do those things or suggest to do those things. But then it says, but you can counsel them, because not every question is purely legal. And so if I were to tell you that you could plead this way and get this, or do this and get this, that might be correct as an attorney to tell you that. But as a counselor, I might say, and by the way, just to let you know, if you do this, here are some things that might happen to you as a result, both legally and just in life. And if I start explaining to you the impact this will have on your job, for instance, or something, that's more counseling as opposed to being an attorney, attorney and counselor. And so they say, right in the rules, they say there's this broader area where you can give somebody advice that is not purely legal in nature, but takes into account other things. And so in the case of the person who came into my office and said, I want to hire you, but I do not want to follow your advice. I want to try this crazy route that won't work. I actually thought it'd be unethical for me to take their money, because I would have taken their money, that would have failed, and then later on they'd be in my office going, well, you should have talked me into this. I guarantee it. Guarantee that would have happened. Now, it didn't happen because I never talked to the person again and didn't try to do their crazy theory. But that's my point. I've heard from a few people over the years, not ones who hired me, but just people I've met, who said, I got pulled over once and I don't think I was drunk and I blew some number that I think was wrong. And and there are people out there, I'm sure, who are convinced that they were wrongly charged with drunk driving. But the vast majority of people I've spoken to, let's put it this way, the vast majority of people I've spoken to who I know would know these things said, yes, I was drinking, I was driving, I did something that drew attention to me for the police officer, I failed the field sobriety tests, boom, 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 and I'm guilty. What can we do to lessen the harm? Not how can we get out of this and evade it altogether. So I never dealt with anybody who was charged with vehicular homicide or vehicular manslaughter. Never dealt with anything like that. Mine were just pure drunk drivings. But here it is in Tennessee, a proposed law that I suspect is going to pass, and it's a law requiring drunk drivers to pay child support if a parent is killed. And if that passes in Tennessee, it'll become a law. And I wouldn't be surprised if it sweeps the nation and gets passed in other states as well, because with this kind of support, who's going to be against it? So Todd sent it. Thanks a lot. WZTV, ABC 13 News, and Jordan Whittington wrote it. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Be thankful for what you have. You'll end up having more.